Hey guys, this is video number 4 in the chord theory series where we are going to look at how to read chord charts, how chord diagrams work, and they look like this, that tell you how to play different notes and intervals that make up a chord. Now, actually they don't really explain the notes and intervals. It's just a monkey see, monkey do. They tell you which fingers to play, which strings and frets to play, but they don't actually tell you why you're playing what you're playing. Now, if you're watching this video because you just want to jump into playing chords, that's awesome, and you're gonna learn some really cool stuff. You're gonna get more than you bargained for because I'm gonna show you exactly how chord diagrams work, but you're also gonna learn the theory of notes and intervals and why you're playing what you're playing. And really, that's what this series is all about. In the first couple of videos, we looked at how to build chords, how the chords in a key are constructed using an every other note pattern based on the underlying major scale of that key. Then we looked at how this every other note pattern highlights a sequence of tertian intervals, intervals of a major third and minor third that inform how each chord or triad sounds, resulting in what musicians call major chords, minor chords, and a diminished chord in each key. And then we also looked at how to label these chords using a powerful set of symbols called Roman numerals that communicate a couple of things. That is, how each chord fits within the overall set of harmonies in a key, its quantitative value, and also its qualitative value, or how it sounds, based on whether the Roman numerals are uppercase or lowercase. If you want to learn more about how these numerals work, check out this video. And of course, we're looking at all of these patterns, all of these principles, using color to really see and understand the music theory that's at play here. A special pattern of colors that really explains how music works. Now, in each of these different illustrations, we've looked at the patterns of music, the notes and intervals and chords in a key, in different ways. In one way, we've looked at them in a circular formation to see the inherent cyclical nature of these patterns. And then also we looked at them in a table format to really dissect and pick apart the intervals that are at play within a given key, the major thirds and the minor thirds. So in these cyclical and table formats, we've been able to pick apart these patterns and get at the underlying theory to really understand what's going on here, why these harmonies sound so good. But while we've been nerding out about the theory of chords, that is the head knowledge of harmony, at this point, we need to convert what we've learned into actually playing the guitar, to convert our head knowledge into hand knowledge. And to do this, all we have to do is convert these chords back into the array you recognize on the guitar. That is, to transform the note arrangements from the abstract table structure we've been studying back into the practical fretboard format once more. Because this fretboard, after all, is what we actually use to physically play the instrument. And it's easy. For example, take a look at the C major triad 1 in the key of C, shown here in both formats, and you can see how this conversion happens. In the table on the left, the 3 notes of this chord are laid out in a line, with the root listed first. But in the fretboard on the right, this same pattern is plotted on the various frets, with some notes repeated on different strings. Since the guitar is just a stack of chromatic scales, the pattern looks a little different on the guitar, of course, though in both of these formats, table or fretboard, it's all essentially the same. And as a result, you can translate all of the other triads in a key too, so that each one is plotted on the guitar in the very same way, like this. To make a C major chord, D minor chord, E minor chord, F major chord, G major chord, A minor chord, and B diminished chord before rounding back to C major. It's simple enough, right? All you have to do is reconfigure the arrangement, the table format, into the fretboard format, and you're looking at chord diagrams that you can play and really start to make some music. Or at least you're almost there, because while this fretboard diagram is closer to resembling reality, it's not quite there. And the reason why is because these guitar illustrations are still pretty big on the page. I mean, when you consider that most songs have many chords, this space issue becomes a real problem when you try to illustrate all the chords that are played in a piece of music. I mean, if we depicted the fretboard like this, it would take a lot of paper in a printed copy of a song, or a lot of pixels on a screen to show every chord that you'd play in a progression. It's just too much. So to avoid this problem altogether, musicians came up with a clever solution, which ended up being both a little weird and wonderful. The weird part is that they put the fretboard through one more transformation, flipping it upright so that it stands vertically like this. And I say that's weird only because this orientation doesn't match the way it looks when you hold the instrument in your hands. Right? I mean, from your own perspective, when you're strumming the guitar, looking down at the fretboard, the instrument is horizontal. So this vertical orientation is a little weird. And then to save space, they also chopped off the guitar's head and body to show only the neck instead, which is the wonderful part because it removes all of the excess visual information. So you see only the segments of frets that are actually used in a given chord, like this. And as a result, we can now fit many more chords on the page or screen all side by side in one big group. In fact, when you do this for all 7 triads in a key, you get a nice, concise view of the whole family, like these chords in the key of C, all beside each other in a relatively small amount of space. If you've ever played the guitar before, this format looks familiar. It's basically how chords are always depicted, as upright, truncated blocks that look like this. Or at least you may have seen black and white versions of diagrams that resemble these before. But now, with the aid of color music, you have extra insight into how all of the notes relate within each image. And you have the background you need to understand all of the symbols that mark them, like numerals 1, 2, 3, etc. And above each diagram, these labels are just common abbreviations. C means C major, DM means D minor, EM means E minor, F means F major, and so on. Basically, the major chords are simply represented by their letter name, and the minor chords have a little lowercase m following their letter name. And then the diminished chord, in this case B diminished, has a little circle to denote that it's diminished. All of these abbreviations are used to conserve even more space on the page, to make each chord diagram as compact as possible. And once you understand how these chord diagrams are laid out on the page, how they're oriented, and how the charts are vertical, truncated, and what they represent, you can really start to play all sorts of chords using these diagrams as an aid. Now, you're almost there because there's a couple more things I should explain, and those are the numbers, letters, and extra line symbols that show up in chord diagrams. And really, they're just extra markings that explain where to place your fingers and how to physically play the chord on the instrument. So let me explain. To break them all down, this legend illustrates how all of these symbols work, and the role of each hand using the C major chord as an example. Each chord diagram is basically a little grid. So the horizontal lines represent frets, while the vertical lines represent strings. And once you understand that framework, we can move on to the other symbols, like these letters. This O symbol just means that it's a note made by playing an open string. In the C major chord, for example, the third string G and the first string E are played as open strings. You don't press any of the frets. And the X above a string means that it's not played at all. So in the C major chord, it's muted, as represented by this X symbol. And then the numbers show which fingers to use. 1 represents the index finger, 2 is your middle finger, 3 is your ring finger, and then 4 is your pinky, your little finger. So the C major chord is played like this. The first finger is on the second string, first fret, and then the second finger is on the 4th string, 2nd fret, and then the third finger is on the 5th string, 3rd fret. You play E, the open 1st string, and G, the open 3rd string, as open strings. This C major chord, this diagram, represents how you play this C major chord. And sometimes you'll also see what's called a bar line, or a little curved arch like this, that means to press multiple strings by flattening your finger across them. So instead of playing this C major chord down here and it's open, what we call its open position, because we play some open strings within that chord, we can play it as a barred chord up on the 8th fret. And this bar line represents that we're playing all of these notes down here with our first finger across them. Now, if you're right-handed, your left hand presses the strings using your fingertips, making sure that you arch your fingers to avoid touching any of the open strings, while your right hand gently strums across the strings in one fluid motion. So your left hand presses the fretboard, while your right hand strums or picks the strings. And for you lefties, you left-handed players, you do the opposite. So your right hand is used to press the strings, and your left hand strums the strings. In a nutshell, these are the markings you'll find in nearly all chord diagrams, and with a little practice, they're easy enough to interpret in any chord you see. For example, let's play each of these chords in the key of C, starting with C major. It's easy enough, right? Though if you look closely, you may notice something about the numbers in each of these diagrams that's worth mentioning, which is that they have nothing to do with the actual scale degrees used to construct these triads. In other words, the numbers 1, 2, and 3 in each of these diagrams don't correspond with the intervals of each triad. So there's actually a difference in how these same numbers are used when it comes to chords. When you're looking at theory, at the basic way that a chord is built, then the numbers represent scale degrees, like the tonic, interval 1, the major third, 3, and the perfect fifth, 5. But when you're simply looking at technique and how to physically play the chord on the guitar, then the numbers correspond with the fingers you press against the fretboard. Now this point can be a little confusing, I know, since this dual use of the same number symbols is strange, to put it nicely. But it's just one of those things that musicians do that can trip you up if you're not careful. Or if you fail to make the distinction in your mind, that the numbers for theory differ in meaning from the numbers for technique. And this little quirk with the numbers only highlights the larger issue we face with the symbols used in music, which is that they really can get overwhelming. I mean, the fact that we use finger numbers in addition to scale degree numbers, along with Roman numerals on top of letters, can throw anyone for a loop. And this layered complexity has been a source of frustration for people for generations. Which is why color music is so useful, because it does more than just kill two birds with one stone, like I explained in this video, by streamlining our understanding of the letters used for note names and the numbers used to illustrate scale degrees. More than that, these colors ultimately kill an entire flock with one fell swoop. So that eventually, as you learn to see what these colors reveal, the underlying musical patterns that are baked into the color patterns themselves, your interaction with music and your understanding of it becomes seamless and simple. Anyway, I rhapsodize and I digress. Now that you can read these chord charts and understand them, let's play them again in the key of C so you get a feel for how they really work and see how the notes correspond with your positions, your finger positions on the fretboard. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and C. And if you want to get your own fretboard stickers, check out the link below where you can get some labels to put on your fretboard to follow these patterns and all of the keys, all of the chords that you can play in various keys that are symmetrical and consistent from one to the next. In my Theory for Songwriting course, I explain all of that. The link for that is below as well. And thank you for watching this video. I hope that you learned a lot about chords, about harmony, not only in this video about chord charts, but in the whole chord theory series. There's a lot of stuff to soak in and so much fun you can have playing harmonies, and especially once you understand the logic, not just, again, mechanically playing the notes like a robot. You are not a robot, you're a human. Embrace your humanity, enjoy the guitar, and I will see you in the next video.